Jim Harbaugh headed to interview in Minnesota today with Kwesi Mensah. Kwesi Mensah, a guy from Philly area, Cherry Hill, Wall Street power broker, Stanford and Princeton, brilliant guy, has learned about the scouting world from being with Andrew Berry, so he is very, very well schooled. He gets Jim Harbaugh in for an interview with the Minnesota Vikings, but what happens now with Jim Harbaugh? So basically, Michigan knows they're on thin ice with Jim Harbaugh. This isn't like Scott Frost, where Scott Frost is all in with Nebraska, and Scott Frost is everything he does to stay. Jim Harbaugh saw when he lost and got his ass beat by Georgia, beat to a pulp by Georgia. He saw the talent differential, and he saw that this was his time, that he's never going to win a national championship at Michigan, and he doesn't want to play the NIL rules of trying to recruit better, so he wants to go to the NFL with a salary cap league, and he wants to go back in with his brother. It was a good 6 years at I'm going to say it was a decent 6 years at Michigan. He never won the Big Ten until this year, never beat Ohio State, had a bad record against Michigan State, had a losing record against Antonio and against Ohio State. He did bring the program back from Brady Hoke and Rich Rodriguez, and he brought it to relevancy. 9 wins, 10 wins. They would go to New Year's Six Bowls and they'd lose. They'd go to the Gator Bowl and they would lose. So, he had one really terrific season this year, and he's clearly not all in. And in fairness to Jim Harbaugh, Michigan last year was trying to get him to get a pay cut. I mean, he was going to lose at Rutgers last year. He was about, probably 49% going to be fired from Michigan last year. And he's really lucky that Michigan allowed him back for that 1 year. And now Jim Harbaugh, credit to Jim Harbaugh for this year being a magical year. Going out and getting Haskins, developing Aiden Hutchinson and Ojabo, and getting a gift from your brother for 1 year in Mike McDonald. And then Mike McDonald's like, listen, I got to go back where I came from in Baltimore. But Mike McDonald, John Harbaugh really threw his brother a bone because Mike McDonald, you look at what he did with Michigan, he worked wonders with that defense. And then Wink Martindale, John Harbaugh's like, you know what, Mike is ready now. We're going to have Mike McDonald, the UGA frat boy. We're going to have him as our defensive coordinator. And Mike McDonald is special in every single regard. So now that leaves Michigan. I believe that Josh Gattis is the natural fit. I mean, Josh Gattis is a really good offensive coordinator. Josh Gattis wants to be a college coach. Josh Gattis is young. He's been around Nick Saban. He's been around James Franklin. You look at this hire, and he's going to get the interim tag, but he'll probably be the head football coach for the University of Michigan. And that, frankly, is probably the best decision that they could make. They can keep the staff in continuity. I believe that Josh Gattis is going to be pretty good at Michigan as well. I believe he has a chance to be a really solid coach. I mean, who else out there would look at Michigan? I mean, maybe Luke Fickell, but Luke Fickell's a Buckeye. He's staying at Cincinnati through the Big 12. Dave Aranda, I think it's too late in the process. Michigan's not even an easy job. It's a little bit hard to recruit. You play Ohio State. So looking at the Big Ten, I mean, is P.J. Fleck going to go to the University of Michigan? I don't really see it happening either. So it's interesting what Michigan is going to do. You look at some of these other coordinators, and they're probably too young, like Liam Cohen. Kenny Dillingham's a coordinator. So, these guys are, Charles Huff is a really good coach at Marshall, but man, oh man, Jamie Chadwell. I mean, some guys just don't really fitting Michigan. Michigan kind of, unless they want to hire Jamie Chadwell and create a swag factory up in Ann Arbor, it's kind of like Michigan is kind of like this polished Notre Dame-like school of run the football, not wearing mullets and that sort of thing, and shaving, the beard and the mustache and whatnot, and being a tradition. So I think it takes a particular kind of fit at Michigan. Josh Gattis is really professional. The other guys are professional as well, but they just run like more of a, air raid, throw it around kind of offense. Luke Fickell, too, is very firm, kind of professional as well. David Shaw, certainly at Stanford, you can make the parallels there. But I believe that Josh Gattis is the natural choice, and he's very qualified. Josh Gattis is a huge reason, too, why Jim Harbaugh had the success he had last year and in previous years, and recruiting Cade McNamara, recruiting J.J. McCarthy. That's the thing that's sad, is that McCarthy is a really good quarterback, and maybe Jim Harbaugh ends up staying another year. But the fact that Jim Harbaugh is already going to interviews with the Minnesota Vikings, with the Vegas Raiders, I mean, if he really wanted to stay at Michigan, he would never be taking these interviews anyway. So I believe that for Jim Harbaugh in Minnesota, I mean, it takes a lot to get to take an interview with the Minnesota Vikings. They already tried to get Patrick Graham, and if Minnesota ends up hiring Jim Harbaugh, wow, what an interesting parallel, because I do not think Quincy Mesa, he was there with John Lynch. He wasn't there with, ironically, he was there with Kyle Shanahan. He was there with John Lynch. He was not there with Jim Harbaugh. And Jim Harbaugh and Jed York, they had a huge falling out in this process. So it's very interesting that this first-time general manager is targeting Jim Harbaugh because he has no real relation. Maybe he has a relationship with the Baltimore Ravens, and that's the case, because his former boss, Jed York, and Jim Harbaugh couldn't be any more of opposites. So, boy, that would be very interesting. I mean, Jim Harbaugh, he does see football talent. He is, the quote-unquote football guy. And then you combine it with, like, a very modernized style of application like Kwesi Mensah is going to be offering. It could make for a very interesting partnership, a very likable kind of family atmosphere where it isn't just, intimidating, numbers-based, Brendan Staley. And it's not just like old school, run the football, meathead, football guy either. It's not all analytical numbers guy, and it's not all meathead, old school football guy either. You'd be combining the old school football way in Jim Harbaugh with a very numbers-based and meticulous kind of process in a guy that is learning and continuing to adapt his way of great scouting, which Kwesi Mensah is doing. I mean, Kwesi Mensah is a complete inspiration. The guy is unbelievably accomplished, well-spoken, and everything. It's just in the sense of how will he maybe scout? Is he going to know about, the intricacies of the football, which I think Jim Harbaugh would be just a great guy to lean on. So it would make their partnership fascinating if it were the hire in Minnesota. It would be really entertaining to have Jim Harbaugh in Minnesota. I do like Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh is very authentic. He loves the game. He's passionate about the game and his players. He's very competitive. He oftentimes probably does not love to socialize outside of football, and he's quirky, and he's ultimately himself, and he's pretty damn humble as well. So Harbaugh is really, really fun. And if you get him with Quincy Mensah in Minnesota, it would make for a fascinating product. It really would. So there must be some real smoke in Minnesota there for Jim Harbaugh to take on this interview. So this is going to be a fascinating story to uncover, but it shows you, if you're Michigan, you got to prepare for life without Jim Harbaugh if he's already eyeing the NFL.